Working? Okay, I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land we're meeting on today and extend that acknowledgement to all First Nations people present here and all the First Nation groups and people who are involved in the work that we're talking about today. I also wanted to acknowledge Timmahna here, who has travelled all the way from Bundjalung country on northern New South Wales, braving the weather. And this is her first public speaking event. And she's actually stepping up to take the place of another ranger, Ian, who wasn't able to make it. So she's doing all of this last minute. Lots of courage there, so yeah. So today I'm going to be giving you a bit of a short overview of a program that WWF has been involved with over the past few years, Eyes on Country. And then Timmahna will take you, I guess, into some of the on-the-ground work with the Minyamai Rangers, who've been leading some really incredible projects in this space, both within the program and well beyond it. But before we dive into that, let's begin with a few facts to sort of help us set the scene. Some of these things you probably already know, but I think it's always good to start with them. So first, it's sort of very well understood that Indigenous peoples care for over a quarter of Earth's land surface, and they're really safeguarding more than 80% of the world's remaining biodiversity. Second, it's also well known that where First Nations people lead land management, biodiversity outcomes improve. And this is like no different in Australia. But despite all of this, Indigenous peoples and local communities across the world are still often excluded from conservation decision making, and they're too often considered last, if at all, when it comes to the development and application of conservation technologies and in that innovation space. Now, this exclusion isn't just inequitable, it's also wasteful. And you know, I think it's one of the key barriers to tackling our biodiversity and climate crisis. So this is really where the Eyes on Country program has come in. Now, over its life, the Eyes on Country program has supported 11 First Nations organisations to monitor and manage their cultural and ecological priorities, including species of deep cultural significance like a variety of threatened rock wallabies to platypus and even dingoes. It's also contributed to, just put that in there, it's also contributed to capacity building in Indigenous ranger teams, providing access to conservation technologies that best complement their work, with emphasis on that peer-to-peer and ranger-to-ranger learning. And at the same time, it's focused on providing a space for communities to co-design and develop new and old technologies to help build tools that are more inclusive, more accessible, and are relevant to their work. Now, in this tech development space, Eyes on Country has been working with a whole bunch of different providers and technologies, but today I wanted to sort of start with, I guess, the first one we were working with and one we'll focus on a little bit today, which is Wildlife Insights. Now, for those of you who haven't heard about Wildlife Insights, it's a global online platform that many in WWF have been using to sort of help land managers store, process, understand, analyse camera trap images for species outcomes and recovery. And the platform actually also uses integrated AI to assist with image and species recognition. So before launching Eyes on Country, this platform hadn't yet taken on any dedicated feedback from First Nations users across the world at this stage, but there was a really high level of interest in changing that. So in 2023, the program kicked off with a series of workshops in the Kimberleys. And I'm up there with Pius Yarraman, Pius Gregory, up at one of those workshops. And it brought together several Indigenous and Ranger and Aboriginal corporations to test out the Wildlife Insights platform. Now, there was a lot of excitement around this tool. You know, for a lot of the rangers up there, the idea of using AI to help sort through their many images that they were collecting, it was a real game changer. But from that first yarn that we had with everyone, there was some really clear, obvious concerns that came up. You know, people were raising questions about accessibility, the costs of things, and more importantly, and most importantly, data sovereignty and data protections, which often comes up. Now, at the time, Wildlife Insights was actually built as an open and sort of sharing data kind of community. But a lot of people had very sort of legitimate concerns about how that data, especially cultural data in there, might be used or accessed by without their permission. And these concerns basically led to the platform making two major changes. First, stronger data protections were introduced for First Nation users, so they could choose to make their data private and who to share it with, how to share it. And second, the platform also made a formal commitment to be free to use by Indigenous groups into the future. Since then, more updates have followed, and this has followed more work with First Nations people in Australia, but also with local communities overseas. So for example, in places like Peru, WWF is working with local communities who are using wildlife insights to track species like jaguars. While it's just sort of one platform, this is really a case study that demonstrates that even global tools can be made more inclusive if their developers take time to sit down, to listen, and to adapt. And today, through Eyes on Country, Wildlife Insights is now helping a range of First Nations groups around Australia to sort of monitor country and support species recovery and protection. I don't have time to go into all of that, but got a first example up here of some of the work that has been done by the Jabbergai Rangers up in Kuranda using this technology to support Noomba or platypus. And I really wanted to just pass it on and hand it on to Timmahna here to speak a bit about the work that the Minyamai Rangers have been doing with dingoes and some of these tools on country.
Nugum is the Bandjalang word for dingo. The dingo is important for keeping ecosystems healthy, and it is the lawkeeper of country. It has been with us for thousands of years. Unfortunately, in Australia, many call it a pest and no different to a domestic dog. I work on Minyamai RPA on the north coast of New South Wales near Evans Head. I have been working here with Ian and other Minyamai Rangers to learn more about dingoes on my country through the Nugum project. We have been setting up cameras across the property to monitor Nugum packs on country. We also partnered with national parks to set up cameras on the land next to our property to see what the Nugum is doing there too. I've never seen a dingo in person on country yet, but collecting the pictures from the cameras and seeing so many dingoes in the pictures made me feel really happy. It's an amazing feeling knowing that they are out there. It's great getting so many pictures and setting up so many cameras, but it can be hard to manage all of that. So that is where technology has really helped. We have been using the Fulcrum app to collect site data and track where the cameras have been placed. We also use the Wildlife Insights platform to help us sort through pictures. The AI is good at finding dingoes in images for us quickly. Apart from setting up cameras, we are also using other technologies and methods. We analyse dingo scats and to understand what they are eating and use drones to track dingoes. We are also using these technologies to track and look after other culturally important animals. For example, the women rangers are responsible for monitoring and looking after Burrabee, the koala. We are also working to understand how important animals like Nugum and Burrabee interact. All this work is helping us manage our country, helping us inform where we control weeds, do cultural burns, and restore and protect habitat trees, like those used by Burrabee. For Nugum, this work will help to protect them by increasing our knowledge of them and helping us educate local communities and governments on the importance of dingoes to country and us. For me personally, I would like to see dingoes being protected and not known as feral or pest animals. Too many of us, dingoes have been around for a long time, and they are like family. I would also like to see more First Nations peoples involved in conversations about dingoes and other species like Burrabee and how they are managed.
You did well. And I can't really get better than that, so I was just going to finish up here with a bit of a slide on some of those recommendations. And look, Timmahna already covered some of them really nicely there. That first one that Darren also covered, the importance of respecting First Nations knowledge and views on culturally important species, even if that species might not be recognised by Western systems as a native animal or, threatened and therefore of importance. Second, as Timmahna said as well, there needs to be more First Nations people at the decision-making table. And this is especially for those sort of more controversial areas and species of immense cultural importance. And we heard that from Timmahna, but we also heard that in the Welcome to Country this morning. This is an important species, and there's many species like that. And finally, just one point from me, it's really important that we work together to make sure that conservation, technologies and innovations are more inclusive, because, if big global platforms can do it, all of us working in this space can do it. So thanks very much for having us.